Hi, everybody. I'm Danforth Prince. I'm president of Blood Moon Productions. We're an independent press in New York City known for publishing biographies of old-time movie stars who include Elizabeth Taylor, Zsa Zsa Gabor, and impeached presidents such as Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. I'm here to talk about our newest biography of a figure in the arts in the 1940s you might not have heard about before, Mercedes de Acosta, our first full-blown entry into lesbian studies. It exposes a wealth of secrets about some of the most famous women of the early 20th century. Each of them was a famous name, a goddess, on the London stage, the New York stage, or the early film industry. Many of them were lovers of Mercedes de Acosta, as this film will show you. According to some of her contemporaries, Mercedes was the most conversationally charming and one of the most predatory lesbians of the Edwardian age. The book is called The Seductive Sapphic Exploits of Mercedes de Acosta, and its premise is that Mercedes was Hollywood's greatest lover, with a knack for the seduction of public figures who were otherwise thought to be unattainable. Her seductive skills with women, in fact, were said to surpass the seductive charms of any man of her era. Beneficiary of the best education and social connections that her family's Gilded Age fortune could provide, Mercedes proudly and publicly defined herself as a lesbian long before it became counterculture and hip. Mercedes and her older, more beautiful sister, Rita, who during the course of her stylish but unhappy life married two of the Gilded Age's wealthiest men, graced the salons and boudoirs of the cream of aristocratic society, beginning in the Edwardian age through to the end of the Roaring Twenties and beyond. They were each descended from the Dukes of Alba. Their most famous ancestor had been the scandalous 13th Duchess of Alba, who was rumored to have posed nude for one of the masterpieces of Francisco Goya, The Naked Maja. In 1959, Ava Gardner brought the Duchess to the screen in The Naked Maja, its title derived from the nude painting that scandalized Spanish society in the late 18th century when it was commissioned. Throughout her life, Mercedes migrated confidently between New York, where she became a youthful intimate of the city's most famously whispered about lesbian couple, millionairess theatrical agent Elizabeth Marbury, and her longtime lover, the interior decorator Elsie de Wolfe. She spent time in France, where arts pioneer Jean Cocteau introduced her to underground Paris. She spent a lot of time in London, where she met Václav Nijinsky and Igor Stravinsky, and sustained an affair with ballerinas Karsavina and perhaps with Pavlova, and a lot of time in Spain, where she was invited to the bullfights by that nation's last monarch, King Alfonso XIII, the 13th. Page after page of this book is devoted to the private world of the cultural figures who changed the artistic landscapes of Europe and America, with Mercedes enjoying a front row seat. Anatole France, a major literary figure in fin de siècle Paris, wanted to bed both of the de Acosta sisters at the same time. He was rejected. Mercedes even befriended figures from the world of opera, beginning with Enrico Caruso and moving on to such divas as Lina Cavalieri, Emma Eames, Geraldine Ferrar, and Mary Garden, known at the time as the Sarah Bernhardt of opera. Even Marie, the Queen of Romania, was lured by the charms of Mercedes. The playwright Martinez Benavente read his latest Spanish-language dramas to her. Aldous Huxley presented her with a copy of his Brave New World. She, as an adolescent in the shadow of her older sister, were privately entertained by some of the most celebrated musicians of the early 20th century, Paderewski, Toscanini, Puccini, and Debussy. She and Rita became magnets for great painters such as Boldini, famous for his society portraits, Zualoaga, who evolved into one of the favorite painters of the Spanish dictator, Francisco Franco, John Singer Sargent, best known for his portrait of Madame X, and philosophers such as José Ortega y Gasset, and one of Spain's preeminent political philosophers, Miguel de Unamuno. Sarah Bernhardt, Eleonora Duse, the greatest actresses in France and Italy, evolved into lesbian role models for Mercedes after emotionally charged encounters. Later, Mercedes became a passionate acolyte of Isadora Duncan, the mother of modern dance. Pablo Picasso wanted to paint her. Auguste Rodin asked if she'd pose nude for a sculpture. Ethel Barrymore revealed her secrets and told her that Sir Winston Churchill had fallen in love with her and wanted to marry her. Mercedes' circle of acquaintances included Edith Wharton, who described the era's social hypocrisies in the Age of Innocence, and the era's most famous lesbian couple, Gertrude Stein and Alice B. Toklas, with whom she departed on what was reported as a ménage à trois during an extended motor tour through Spain before its civil war. Fueled by dreams of becoming a screenwriter, Mercedes, perhaps to escape from the rigors of the haute bourgeoisie, migrated to silent-era Hollywood, where she worked on film scripts for MGM's Wunderkind, Irving Thalberg, and developed a knack for seducing some of the era's most visible screen goddesses. They included Jean Acker and Natasha Rambova, each a wife or ex-wife of early Hollywood's most romantic hero, Rudolph Valentino. Gossips at the time breathed about Hollywood that whereas Mercedes succeeded in hauling each of his wives off to bed, Valentino himself never did. Mercedes' affairs also included a fling with Nazimova, the imperious Russian-born reigning queen of Metro in the early 1920s, and later she became the godmother of Nancy Reagan. Also had an affair with the just-arrived in Hollywood femme fatale of the 20th century, Marlene Dietrich, one of the most fascinating women who ever lived. Mercedes later sustained a 10-year romantic affair with Dietrich's arch-rival, Greta Garbo, the impossibly famous and impossibly enigmatic star of such pictures as Mata Hari and Grand Hotel. Mercedes also managed to seduce the tragic blonde goddess, Jeanne Eagles, subject of several Hollywood biopics, including one starring Kim Novak. Eagles, a cheerful role model for hundreds of thousands of American teenagers, enchanted silent film audiences of the 1920s with her Midwestern charm and joie de vivre. Mercedes won her confidence, her confessions, and, during Jean's difficult final years, her heart. When the great profile, screen actor John Barrymore, came into Mercedes' life, she ended up seducing his wife, a woman known by the name of Michael Strange. Mercedes also sustained brief intimacies with the reigning queen of 1940s Broadway, Katharine Cornell, and a much more intense, extended affair, conducted in both New York City and in France, with Cornell's nemesis, Eva Le Gallienne, a dignified, majestically talented American pioneer of the stage plays of Henrik Ibsen, and later a member of the inner circle of the Queen of Off-Broadway during the 1970s, Lucille Lortel. Mercedes even sustained a passing fling with the Belle of Alabama, Tallulah Bankhead, the most defiantly unpredictable and very naughty bad girl of her era, and the former Toast of London. At least part of that chapter, an extended overview of Miss Bankhead, derived from many conversations at her apartment in New York during the final over-medicated years of her outrageously unconventional life. Mercedes even seduced Ona Munson, who, before her tragic suicide, immortalized herself as Belle Watling, the bordello keeper who entertained Rhett, Clark Gable, butler, in Atlanta before it burned in Gone with the Wind. In the late 1950s, strapped for cash and in ill health, Mercedes wrote her own autobiography entitled Here Lies the Heart. Saturated with details about love affairs she'd sustained, she outed famous lesbians and bisexuals she'd been intimate with. Those who were still alive to read what Mercedes had written about them were horrified, and many, especially Garbo, turned against her in fury. It was at this point in her life, beginning in 1965, that Mercedes befriended the co-author of this book, Darwin Porter, sustaining ongoing dialogues, some of them at parties and events, some of them at his home in Staten Island. These dialogues continued until her death in 1968. Focusing on the ironies of her eventful and much traumatized life, she described to Darwin what really happened, uncensored and unvarnished. Even though she had fallen from the former lofty heights she had occupied, she once said to Darwin, "You know, you're my only friend who isn't famous." You'll come away from an experience with this exciting book with the realization that not all great lovers are men. Women have been scandalous seducers since the days of Cleopatra, who once ordered 50 sex slaves in one night to service her. And in the 1950s, in case you haven't heard it already, even Marilyn Monroe was regularly involved in sex without any particular gender preference. Incidentally, we've scheduled the release of a biography of Marilyn for sometime next month. Please look for it on Amazon. It's entitled Marilyn, Don't Even Dream About Tomorrow. Many thanks to all of you from all of us at Blood Moon Productions. And keep reading. Reading, they say, if you pick your titles correctly, is a proven antidote for stupidity. Many thanks to all of you. Best wishes. I'm Danforth Prince from Blood Moon Productions.